Welcome back to Sasquatch Theory, where we dive deep into the mysteries of Bigfoot, Dogman, and the unexplained. In today's episode, we head down to the swamps of Florida to hear from Jason, a self-described swamp rat with some incredible experiences. Jason has found jaw-dropping tracks in the Florida wilderness and documented them with high-quality photographs. He's also discovered strange tree structures, including teepee formations, that suggests something far more powerful than humans at work. While in the woods with his family, Jason heard eerie whistles echoing through the forest and even voices calling for help that left him too unsettled to investigate. Jason believes without a doubt these tracks and structures are the work of the Skunk Ape. Along with his cryptid encounters, Jason has lived in a haunted house and faced intense paranormal activity, making his story one of the most unique we've ever shared here on Sasquatch Theory. You won't want to miss this one. If you enjoy listening to Sasquatch Theory, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and hit the bell notification. If you have a Bigfoot encounter you would like to share on video, in person, please get in touch with me. I'm really looking for people to share their encounters on film, and it would be a pleasure to meet up with you in the future. With all that being said, let's dive straight into Jason's swamp ape encounters from the state of Florida. Today we are interviewing Jason from the state of Florida, and he has found some very compelling tracks out in the Florida wilderness and some amazing tree structures. Jason, welcome to Sasquatch Theory. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Jason, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and your Bigfoot encounters and experiences from the very beginning, please.
Okay, well, my name is Jason, and I'm 52 years old. I live just outside of Daytona Beach, Florida, and I've lived here ever since 1980. I'm a swamp rat and a woods runner, and not too much I haven't experienced out in the woods that I can't explain, but, you know, the older I got, there was things that I just couldn't explain. I've been out hunting before in Seminole State Forest down the road from me. Last year, I was out hunting with a friend of mine, and we were a mile back in the swamp. It had just rained heavily the night before. It was probably about 35 degrees that morning, and we were on a trail about a mile back, and there was a pool in the natural depression, and I was getting ready to cross it when I looked down and saw a bare hominid footprint. And it's like, well, nobody's walking around out here barefoot. And, especially at night in the rain out in the swamp a mile back, nobody's walking around out there like that. So I took pictures of it, and probably about a size 8. I'm a size 11. It's 5 toes. And then I saw the other footprint on the other side where whatever it was stepped across. The only thing I can think of is that it had to be a skunk ape. The other side of Highway 46 is Rock Springs Wildlife Management Area, and I've been back there hunting before. Out there squirrel hunting with my son a couple of years ago, and we were way back up in the back part of the property, and we got out onto an old fire break. We're walking along. I'm out front. I'm looking for signs of squirrels. Didn't really see too much, and all of a sudden, just got this weird feeling like something kept telling me not to go any further. I kept going a little bit further just to see what was going on, and it just really got intense, and I didn't want to put my son in danger because he was a lot younger at the time. And so I went on ahead and told him, hey, I don't see any sign. Let's go on ahead and turn around. And as soon as he turned around and started to walk back, I opened up my shotgun, took out the bird shot, and put some slugs in there, and I kept an eye on the back trail. There's a wildlife sanctuary that I grew up running around in. I've seen bears. I've seen coyotes. I've seen pretty much everything in the state of Florida, including a panther back there. And I was back there with my wife one time, and we were about 3 miles back by the river. And, being a swamp rat, I've heard pretty much everything here in the state of Florida. And all of a sudden I heard this weird whistle noise kind of like a bird, but not. And it's nothing here in the state of Florida, and I can't whistle, so I can't emulate it. But uh, I got an uneasy feeling like I was being watched by something, not necessarily threatening, but being watched by like an apex predator, just being studied and observed. So I just told her, hey, look at the time, we need to go, and just unsnap my the holster on my revolver just to make sure that if I needed to pull it out, I didn't have that extra step. And we rode off. We were on bicycles, and we rode off. South of Orlando is the Green Swamp, and there was a friend of mine had a gun range back there at one time, and it was way back in the deep part of the Green Swamp, and there was no other houses around. The closest dwelling was like maybe a half mile away, and before they built up the more modern part of the facility, they were still using just earthen berms. And I work overnights. I was asleep one night, and he starts trying to get a hold of me, and my phone's off when I'm asleep. And so he started to message my wife, hey, I need to talk to Jason, get him up. And it was probably January when this happened, so it was really cold out. And yeah, he said that I called him back. He said that he was out there, and these two guys are combat veterans. Their guns were in their truck. They were starting to walk back, and I started hearing wood knocking back behind the berms in the swamp. And then they heard an answer on the other side. That freaked them out, and they jumped in their truck and took off. I was out there doing some training, and there's a big canal on the property, and I walked over to it, and I'm standing there just walking around looking, and I look down, and there's a hominid footprint that's unshod. And it's like, nobody's walking around here in this swamp at night because the mosquitoes are the size of helicopters. They'll pick you up and carry you off. And plus there's water moccasins and an 8-foot gator that patrols that canal. But it was in a position where if you were going to squat down and reach down to get some water and cup it in your hand and take a drink, that's where you would place your foot. And it kind of slid a little bit because it was on an incline. So I stood back behind it and I mimicked it. And then when I stood up, I planted my foot. And then I looked where I saw that footprint, looked over in the reeds, and there was the other one. And so I called everybody over to show them. And the owner of the property was like, see, I told you, I heard something. And there's proof that there's, footprints. I thought, yeah, I mean, I never doubted you. Those pictures, unfortunately, didn't come out very well. But, yeah, those are pretty much my experiences here in Central Florida.
All right, Jason, thank you very much for sharing that with me. And it sounds like you found some really good tracks. And, yeah, the photos that you shared were very interesting. They definitely look like skunk ape tracks. What's your opinion about it? Do you think there's any chance it could be human, or do you think that this is something unknown?
It has to be something unknown. It has to be a skunk ape because, again, it was raining that night heavily. It was probably about 30 degrees that morning, about a mile back in the swamp. There's nobody walking around unshod back there. And to my knowledge, there's nobody that's feral living back in that area either.
Yeah, absolutely. And the impression looks pretty deep too. I feel like if a human stepped there, it wouldn't be that deep and defined.
I'm probably thinking, like I said, it was about a size 8. I'm a size 11. I'm 6 foot tall. It very well could have been 6 foot tall and just solid muscle. And that's why I left a deeper impression. Because I stepped next to it and I mean, mine wasn't that deep.
Yeah. And did you get a strange feeling when you were in that area? Like you were being watched or like it was too quiet?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it was fairly quiet and nothing was really moving anyway because it was still kind of drizzly and cold. So nothing's really going to come out. I was squirrel hunting with a friend of mine, so nothing's really going to come out of their little hammocks up in the trees to go run around looking for food in that type of weather. I didn't get any weird feelings there, but like I said, across the street in the other WMA, I got weird feelings on that fire break. It takes a lot to rattle me, and it was a little unnerving knowing that something, was sitting there just, I got that gut feeling, don't go any further. had I been with some buddies of mine, we probably would have pressed on just to go see what it was, but I wasn't going to put my son at risk.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And did you believe in Bigfoot prior to finding the tracks?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you've heard
There's
about these things from locals, from friends.
what's that as far as the skunk ape or just
Yeah, like
Bigfoot in
you've
general?
heard about local legends of the skunk ape.
Um, Not so much in my area. I grew up in the suburbs. Um, and it's just stuff that I read about because growing up, obviously we didn't have the internet and we didn't have YouTube or anything, but just reading about it through Seminole Indian lore and books on Bigfoot, and they'd mentioned it. The Florida cousin being smaller, and no, I've always believed in them. I mean, there's so much evidence to prove that they exist.
Very cool. And yeah, I agree. There's a lot of proof out there, a lot of people with encounter stories that you just can't deny. They seem really sincere. And yeah, just the evidence. I mean, there's a lot of sign out there that people find, whether it's perfect tracks, they've casted them, structures, strange videos, trail cam photos. I mean, the list goes on. I mean, people have been seeing these things all around the world for many generations.
Well, I'm going to put you in touch with a friend of mine who he pig hunts down in a green swamp, and he's got pictures of them. He's physically seen them. He's encountered them up in North Florida. He's in the military, and he's been up in Canada doing joint training exercises. He's heard them in the valleys up there. And the Canadian military even knew about it. They're like, yeah, those are our neighbors. We leave them alone. They leave us alone. So you're really going to have an interesting time talking with him. He's got a lot more stories than I do.
Oh man, I can't wait. What did he see in Florida?
What did he see in Florida? Well, he's got pictures of them that he took while he was out pig hunting down in the Green Swamp. And the Green Swamp south of Orlando, and it pretty much runs from Polk County to Sumter County. And for those who don't live in Florida, that's pretty big. Um, and of course, and I had my encounter out there in the Green Swamp also. Um, but he's physically seen them. He's got pictures of them. Up in North Florida, they were on training exercises in the middle of the night. He's a sergeant in the Army, and he had on his night vision, and they were moving through this one wood line, and he kept getting this feeling that they were being followed, and he turned around and looked with the night vision, and he saw one ducking behind the trees, following them the entire time. So, I mean, he's actually seen them up in North Florida as well. And then, like I said, up in uh, the hinterlands of Canada, they were going through a valley and they started hearing like wood knocking in the middle of the night up on the hills around them. And he said, "Is that what I think it is?" And I said, "Yeah, those are our neighbors. We leave them alone, they leave us alone." So even the Canadian military knows about them. But he's got a lot of stories. He's got pictures. He's got a lot of evidence. You're really going to enjoy talking with him.
Yeah, that'll be amazing. Have you returned to the area where you found the tracks to look for more evidence or possibly look for these creatures?
Actively, no, I have not. I have been back out in that area since to go hunting, and in that area, it hadn't rained or anything when I went back to it, so I didn't see anything. Um, I have been invited by one of the groups here in Central Florida to go on Bigfoot hunts. They primarily hang out in the Green Swamp area, but I have mentioned to them about Seminole State Forest, and um, we're going to try and organize something to go out there. It's just working overnights. My time is different from everybody else. I would
Okay.
like to actually go out there and find more evidence or actually see one. I'm a believer. I'm not a knower, but I am a believer because I haven't physically seen one yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think these creatures are?
I think they're just a species unto themselves. I don't think they're an ape. I don't think they're a human. I think they're like something in between. They're just a hominid species unto themselves. Some people think that they could be the missing link. I just think that they're, just an animal unto themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think they're a people And I don't think they're necessarily primate. I just think they're Sasquatch. I mean, they're their own classification of whatever they are.
Yeah, they're like, they're like a bear or an alligator. I mean, they're just their own animal. They're not a subspecies of anything else. The only thing that I can think of is that obviously the Bigfoot up in Canada and the Pacific Northwest, they're people say 8, 9 feet tall. Here in Florida, everything's smaller because it's so hot. Our bears are smaller, our panthers are smaller, our Bigfoot are smaller. They only get to be about 6 feet tall.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And I wonder if there are any big ones out there. Like for a majority of the skunk apes, maybe they're smaller, but if there's like a huge male in the area, like how big would it actually get?
Kind of like an alpha male. Um, I don't know. There's the legend of Boggy Creek, and they never did really give a size comparison of how big that is, and that's up in Fouke, Arkansas. But of course, that's far more north than Florida. So maybe that's a break off of something from the Texas Hill Country or the Ozarks or something like that. But down here, I don't know. I wouldn't think that they would get much more than 6 feet, just because the more body mass, the hotter it's going to be, and the harder it's going to be to shed heat. And anybody that's lived in Florida or been around Florida during the summer, our 11 months of summer, you get hot and you stay hot. So that's why everything tends to be smaller, to help dissipate heat faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you ever see that episode that Les Stroud put out of that? I don't know if he was a forest ranger, if he worked for Fish and Game, but he claims that they were driving down a Forest Service road and they ran one over and killed it, and they were told never to talk about it. The guy sounded really sincere, very legit, and that happened in Florida.
No, I didn't hear about that one. I'm going to have to go. You said it was Les Stroud?
Yeah, yeah, he made a documentary about the guy. It was a really good interview. I mean, the guy is super credible and makes you wonder why they told him never to speak about it.
Well, the one thing I can tell you about that is one of my friends owns a gun shop in the area. He's in his late 60s. He said that back when he was in his 30s, he was living over by the west coast of Florida on the mainland side from Cedar Key, and he was in a WMA over there. I don't recall the name of it right now, but he said that he was up in a tree stand deer hunting, and out from him there was a road, and across the road there was a pond. And he said that he heard brush breaking and a little bit of noise. So he picked up his rifle, he looked through the scope, and he saw what he thought was a person in a ghillie suit come out and then start walking along the edge of the pond and then go back into the woods. And he was like, well, that's kind of weird. Why would you wear something like that deer hunting? Great way to get shot. So he came down when the sun started to go down. He got out onto the road, and two other guys came walking up the road because they were headed back. And he said that he asked them, hey, your buddy was out here walking around. And like, we don't have anybody else out here. And he said, well, this guy was wearing a ghillie suit. And he said that they got really quiet, and they said, we don't think that was a guy in a ghillie suit. That we saw that earlier. That's kind of what we thought at first, but we dismissed that as soon as we got a little bit closer, and it took off. And then my friend checked with one of the Fish and Game officers, and she had indicated that yes, there was like cabbage monkeys, skunk apes in the area. And she said, I'll be happy to take you over to the other side of the property, which you had to access through another gate that they only had keys for. And I'll meet you over there tomorrow by that gate. And then, we'll go and, I'll show you some of the things that I've seen. So he showed up over there at like 6 a.m. She never showed up. And then finally, one of the officers came by and said, yeah, she doesn't work over here anymore. She got transferred yesterday. So that's a little odd that they would turn around and transfer somebody from wanting to show, Bigfoot evidence. But he did say that in the brochure, in the back of it, back in the 90s, it did mention something alluding to the fact that there was Bigfoot in the area and not to mess with them, just leave them alone. And that's in an actual WMA pamphlet. And I don't remember the name of it right now. I can probably get it for you in a little bit, but
Yeah, I seen it. It's in the Fish and Game rules, and it says there's no taking of any skunk apes. I, that was
oh,
hard to believe, but I
that's
saw it. Yeah, it's wild.
yep, that's it. So I mean, even Fish and Game here in the state of Florida recognizes it.
Yeah, that's really
So
interesting because I interviewed a farmer in Missouri, and the forest ranger there, he spoke with him about the Bigfoot activity, and later on they transferred him somewhere else just out of the blue.
yeah, it's weird because they'll mention it in the brochures, but then if you talk to them, then they get rid of them. They move them on to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? It's like a little footnote. Hey, don't mess with a Bigfoot. Don't mess with a skunk ape.
Hmm.
We're also not going to talk about it either.
Yeah. So much for freedom of speech.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason they're keeping it under wraps, and who knows what that is. I mean, maybe it is for the protection of the animal, because if Fish and Game officially recognizes it, it ends up on the news. You're going to have everybody out there wanting to go out there and look around, and you're going to have all kinds of idiots running around with guns. You're going to have people running around trying to, get lost in the swamp, and they got to go get rescued because they've never been out there before. Stuff like that. It'd just be a big circus, and probably just trying to prevent all that. That's the only thing that I can think of.
Yeah, that makes sense. It would definitely attract a lot of strange people. And in these areas, you want outdoorsy people out there, people who respect the land, whether they're hunting, fishing, or just camping, but just to bring in just anyone and everyone. It would definitely ruin these areas, especially for hunters.
Yeah, and again, you'd have paranormal investigators that have never set foot in a swamp before. They'd be running around out there getting lost, getting hurt. You'd have guys that just wanted to, man, I'm going to go shoot one, just grabbing guns and running out there, and people are going to get hurt in one way or another. And that's the only thing I can think of why they shut it down so quick and they don't advertise officially. I mean, it's on the brochure, but they don't sit there and recognize it to the point of where they're going to talk about it, because they want to keep that circus from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And the impact that it would have on them, wildlife, would just be devastating if there was so many people in there. And there are some listeners that think hunting is evil, but actually there's more animals because of hunting, and it ties in with nature. I think if you hunt, for some reason there ends up being more animals, and it's actually beneficial to the land and the wildlife. But if you don't hunt, it's actually really bad for wildlife, and
Absolutely.
it causes troubles.
Well, especially with the apex predators being hunted out. We had wolves in Florida up until like the late 1800s, early 1900s. We had red wolves here, and they were basically exterminated up until about the first part of the 21st century. There was only 10 known left in existence, and they're probably all gone by now. So there's that apex predator is gone. Back in the 80s, they had to reintroduce coyotes because they shot out all the coyotes, and then the rodent population exploded. So they started bringing them in from out west. So now you see little Florida coyotes, and then the bigger ones came from out west. And now it's open season on coyotes because now they're breeding out of control.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
if you don't cull the deer herds, then they start getting the wasting sickness, and they start dying off just through natural disease. So yeah, you definitely have to keep the population down. I mean, you don't want to shoot out an area, but yeah, you definitely have to cull the herd.
Hmm. Yeah, the wolves will seek out deer or elk that have diseases, and they take them out. And if there were no wolves, then those deer would breed, and then they all start dying out, and there's nothing to keep the wildlife in check.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's a fine balance to it all. Hunting is definitely essential, and it's encoded in our DNA and a part of nature.
Well, we're apex predators also. That's why our eyes are up front. But you go further back into our lizard brain, we were hunted by apex predators.
Hmm. Yeah,
So we still
absolutely.
have that we still had that prey mode in our the back of our brain, and but we've climbed to the top of the food chain. But you get out in the woods and you find out real quick that you're not necessarily at the top of the food chain when you're facing down a 10-foot alligator that I saw the other day in the Akawaha River. You're not at the top of the food chain right there.
Mm-hmm.
We got great whites off the coast, and you go out there swimming, you're not at the top of the food chain.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I felt like when I was hunting. I thought, man, these deer don't stand a chance because I got a bow or a rifle, and then you get paralleled out of there by a cryptid creature, and it's like, oh no, I've become the prey.
Yeah. I was up in North Florida at one of my accounts because I make deliveries, and there's a swamp next to it, and I'm out in dark parking lots in the middle of the night by myself. And we deal with homeless people, meth heads, stuff like that. So you just become used to that. So you're always on alert. But the night that I pulled up, I parked my semi, I got out. I got this weird feeling that I was being watched by, an apex predator, not in a threatening mode, but like it was just curious and it was just watching me. And I had called another guy who used to run that area and asked him, and I said, "Hey, man, have you ever felt anything weird?" Because he believes more in aliens than he does in Bigfoot. And I said, "Man, I honest to God think it's a skunk ape or a Bigfoot or something standing there because I'm right near the Georgia border, just on the other side of the river." And he said, "A Bigfoot? I mean, maybe an alien, but I don't think a Bigfoot." And I mean, one exists, the other probably doesn't. But I mean, I think they all exist personally, but it was just weird because I got out of my cab and I just got this weird feeling I was being watched, and it stayed with me the whole time I was there. And I just tried to hurry up, get my job done, and get out of there because who wants to have that feeling? I didn't feel threatened like I was going to be attacked. I just felt that I was being observed, and it's not a good feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely know that they're territorial, they're curious, but what else are they up to? It's really hard to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you watch the movies and they range from like you said, being territorial to the one movie, what is it, Primal Rage, where they run around with bow and arrows and they have face masks and all that. It could be anything. It probably runs the gamut. Are they that intelligent? Maybe. But like the movie Exists, that one actually creeped me out a little bit because it is as realistic as it is.
Yeah, that one definitely gave me chills and put it in perspective for me what it would be like to be chased out of the woods, because we hear those stories from people, those encounters where they got chased out of the woods by one of these things, and people say they ran me out of the woods. But yeah, that movie definitely creeped me out.
Yeah, I don't ever want to be chased out of the woods. I mean, I've never really had a certain patch that I wouldn't go back to, except for that one fire break out there in Rock Springs. I probably will never go back to that again, but I am kind of curious about what was down there. So if I do go back to it, I'm going to see if I have the same feeling. If I have the same feeling, then I know there's something back there that I don't need to mess with. But if I don't, well, whatever it was, either moved on or it was just a feeling for that day, something like that. But
Yeah, absolutely. The terrifying part is I've actually heard stories similar to the movie Exist. There was one on the Travel Channel. It's hard to say if they, made it more dramatic than what it actually was, but the guy, he was running for his life by one of these things and it was chasing him. He jumped underneath the fence, crawled back through the field, and it was still coming after him. He ran into his cabin and this thing was banging on the door, crashing the side of the house. He said it tore up everything outside, and then eventually it just left. But man, that one spooked me, and that's a real encounter.
and that's why I carry a gun.
Hmm.
Um, what was that TV series? Something in the Woods, or
Yeah,
they did all kinds of stuff. They did cryptids, they did ghosts, they did all kinds, and they had several on there like that where people were being chased out by dogmen, Bigfoot, stuff like that.
yeah. I think that would be the one that I was referring to. Something in the woods, terror in the woods, something like that.
Yeah, Terror in the Woods, something like that.
Hmm.
That one was an interesting series. I really liked that series, and as far as ghosts, 100% believe in them. I have spirits in my house, and yeah, I mean, my wife is a practicing witch. Um, they're around. I grew up in a very, very haunted house over in Central Florida, and I mean, it's always been there. We had a very malevolent spirit in that house. So yeah, all that stuff is real. All that stuff does exist. I
Mm-hmm.
don't discredit anything. And people who say that they encountered something, I'll never scoff or laugh at them and say, yeah, that's not true, because everybody has their own experiences. I've had mine, and people say I'm full of it, but I know what I experienced, and I'm glad that most people haven't had to experience what I've experienced, especially with the paranormal, with the ghost and everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Unfortunately, people are out there seeking the paranormal, hoping to have experiences, but once you have a few, you don't want them anymore.
And that's excuse me, that's kind of where I'm at with Bigfoot, because I've been told by several people that you can be a believer, but once you physically see one and become a knower, it changes your whole perspective and outlook on being out in the woods. Then you know for a fact you're not alone anymore. You can speculate all day long. I mean, I've been within 10 feet of bear out in the woods. They don't bother me. As a kid, there was a panther to cross the road when I was riding my bike back there. I mean, I've been in the water with 6-foot alligators. None of that stuff bothers me. But if I physically see a Bigfoot, it might change my perspective on things. Is it going to keep me out of the woods? Absolutely not. Is it going to give me a different outlook on it? Probably so.
No, yeah, without a doubt. Especially if you have a bad experience. I'm sure there's people that they've had positive experiences. I mean, sounds like Roger and Bob Gimlin, Roger Patterson and
Hmm.
Bob Gimlin, like they had somewhat positive experience. It just walked off. I mean, from what
Hmm.
I seen, from what I heard, and the horse was
Right.
spooked. I'm sure they were spooked, but it's not like it came at them like it tried to get them. And I'm sure if that would have happened, their perspective on everything would have been completely different.
Right. Yeah. She just walked by and it's like, oops, I've been seen. And she kept walking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's the people that, well, like in Legend of Boggy Creek, he's out there, he sits down on a tree stump, and he goes to smoke a cigarette, and he sees it, and it walks by, it steps out in front of him, and turns around and walks off.
Yeah.
And then like that other TV show where they're out there and then the thing starts following them, and then like the one kid, he's running down the trail and he looks back and it's right behind him. You know, I've had surgery on both my knees. I can't run that fast. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Another reason I carry a gun.
Yeah, for sure. I don't blame you. And yeah, when you go back out there hunting, you'll have to keep an eye out for structures, more tracks. I'm sure you'll find more tracks in the future. And any activity, whether it's like wood knocks, them pushing down trees, grunting, screaming, whatever it may be, just definitely keep an eye out.
Well, I was on a Jeep ride last Sunday up in the Ocala National Forest, and I did call out to the trail boss. If anybody saw the Bigfoot structure, I forgot to tell you about this, and I forgot to send you the picture. There was kind of like a little half teepee just inside the wood line, and I said, "Hey, did you all see that?" No, we didn't. Okay, go on ahead and run back and go get some pictures of it. So they stopped the column. I turned my Jeep around. I went back about 100 yards. I got out. I got a couple pictures, and then I drove back up because I was the tail gun on that Jeep ride. And yeah, so as we were driving, I was sending the pictures to the trail boss. So I need to send you those pictures.
Absolutely. I would very much like to see them. What was it? Like a TP, an arch, an X? What'd you find?
It's kind of like a half teepee. Just there was kind of like a main branch, and then they were just kind of laid up against that branch in kind of like teepee fashion. It was like a half teepee. Um, I did post it on the one Bigfoot site, um, Mid Florida Bigfoot Research. I did post it on there, and another guy chimed in that he had seen similar things in that same area, and he had actually seen like some tracks or something.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what do you think the structure meant?
I'm not really sure. I mean, it could be like maybe a hunting blind. I mean, like we put up blinds when we go hunting deer or turkey or something. I mean, obviously they're more well camouflaged because they're furry, and they look like a giant bush. Um, could it be a hunting blind? Maybe. I don't. I mean, obviously it's not a structure to keep off the elements because unless they put boughs over it or made like a debris hut and threw a bunch of leaves or pine needles or something on top of it, but it was too far apart, spaced too far apart in order to be able to hold anything like that. What it was, I don't know. Maybe some type of hunting blind, or maybe some type of landmark, something like that, or an edge of a territory, something like that. I mean, just a little bit further down, there was a big black bear walking by, and we got pictures and video of that too. I mean, maybe it's something like that. Maybe they put it up. Hey, there's a big black bear in the area. Just let the other ones know.
Yeah, those are all plausible theories. And if black bear can exist in the area, then so can these things. And like you said, there's hogs in there, there's swamps, and there's just areas where people can't get to. So it seems to be a really good location for these things to exist.
Yeah, because they're going to go hide in the areas where we're not going to go. Just like the military recon teams and stuff. They don't hide behind a bush. They go into the thickets and stuff where the enemy isn't going to follow them. And the enemy's not likely to stumble upon them. So I would think the Bigfoot would do the exact same thing. They see a big line of Jeeps coming and they go walk into the thickets, or they have like some type of blind set up and they go sit behind it or something, or stand behind a tree or something like that, just to be obscure and be out of the way.
Yeah, and if you see a 10-foot alligator, you're not going in there at night, especially in the swamps.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was on my way up to the Jeep ride and crossed over the Ocklawaha River. We slowed down going over rivers just because I like to look, and glanced over, and here's a 10-foot alligator just cruising right down the middle of the channel.
Wow. Yeah, and that definitely gives you the feeling like I don't want to fall in the water. There's no way I'm going to walk through here at nighttime. So, I mean, there's definitely not people out there. You often hear skeptics say, "Oh, there's people everywhere in Florida." No, there's not. And there's areas that are just so remote that people can't get to.
I mean, we do have, uh, there are some like really eccentric homeless that live way back in the backwater areas of the Ocala National Forest, but you'll never see them. They're back there. They don't want to be found. There's rumors that there's like a little small group, like 4 or 5 old Vietnam vets that live back in there. I've heard that for years. But I mean, you'll never see them. They'll see you, but you'll never see them. So, I mean, if they can exist all the way back there and nobody sees them, why can't a Bigfoot exist also? And they're not actually building like a cabin, like a man would, or tents or something like that, actual structures. They're going to build like a nest or some type of blind or something that blends in. Where man will always build some type of like square, dimensional geometric structure, where nature isn't like that. There's no straight lines in nature.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it makes me wonder if people experience Bigfoot activity and they think it's just like homeless people back there or someone living in the swamps.
It very well could be. I mean, nobody's going to go charging out there to go find out who it is. And I've been to accounts where there's swamps back behind the stores, and there's homeless people literally laying there on mattresses watching you the whole time, and they're just inside the wood line. I mean, that's creepy enough. But to think that there's you know skunk apes all the way back in the woods walking around, and you're never going to know. I mean, I'm not going out into. I've had I had a homeless guy screaming in the woods one night, "Get it off me! Oh God, get it off me!" And sorry, bud, I don't have a gun. I'm not going in there to see what's going on. I called 911 and told the cops about it. I heard a woman screaming up in North Florida back in the wood line at another one of my accounts. I don't have a way to defend myself or protect that person. I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to go charging into it. I called the cops and I left it to them. Now, had I had my rifle or something, that'd be a different story. Hey, let's go find out what's going on. But I'm 100% defenseless out there. We're not allowed to carry, and I can't put myself in a position like that. I have a family.
Yeah. And also, cryptid creatures will mimic like a person that's in distress or in trouble, and they can mimic words. And I've heard it a lot with dogman encounters and Bigfoot encounters where someone's screaming help, help, or there's like a baby crying, and when people pursue that noise in the woods, they see like this werewolf type creature, and it's just like, oh man, they were being lured out there. Yeah, so I think you did the right thing.
Kind of like an audible will-o'-the-wisp. Instead of it being a light that keeps drawing you further in, it's a noise, like you said.
Yeah, you want to help, but you got a bad feeling about it. You definitely had like this gut feeling, like don't go in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the one where the guy was screaming, I actually saw him go in there with a bicycle, and I know there's a small homeless camp back there, but I don't know what was going on, and I can't put myself at risk like that. The woman, I have no idea what that was. That just came out of nowhere, and I was the only one in that area. All the other businesses were closed, and it was just silent. There was just the sounds of nature in the middle of the night, which out there isn't all that much. And all of a sudden, this woman just starts screaming. I'm like, oh, time to call 911.
Yeah, that's spooky. You never know what you'll run into in the woods.
Exactly, and being a swamp rat, I've been out in them, and pretty much my entire life. There's nothing I haven't really encountered that I couldn't handle, but then again, as I got older, there's stuff that I can't explain it, and I'm not going to go any further.
Yeah,
especially being alone or with my son.
Yeah,
I got a bunch of other shooters. I got a bunch of other shooters with me. Yeah, let's go find out. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, no doubt.
So again, I grew up in Central Florida, and we moved here in 1980. And the house that we moved into, it had just gotten finished right before we moved here. So we were the only owners of the house. And it took a little while before weird stuff started to happen around the house. It was just little things here and there. There'd be a knock here and like a disembodied voice there. It didn't really start amping up for a couple more years. There was a room at the back of the house. It was a bedroom that I never really felt comfortable being in. But again, we were the first owners of this house. It was a brand new house, and I never could explain it. Fast forward many, many years, and weird stuff started to happen around the house. There'd be shadow figures moving around inside the house. There was kind of like a short figure of a woman, long hair, and I would see her go from the foyer through the family room and down the hallway. And the first time I saw it, I chased her just to see, like, hey, who are you and why are you in my house? Round the corner, she was gone. Checked the house, nobody was there. The dog at the time, she would stand there and just bark at absolutely nothing until we went to go take a look, and there was a figure about as tall as the door frame and had kind of like reddish eyes, and it was very menacing. And it was obviously it scared the dog. It scared me, and then it disappeared. Life went on, and I had my first wife, the mother of our son. Before we got married and we were getting ready to start saving up money to buy a house, we had moved in with my mother so that we could, we moved back into the house just so we could save up some money. And she was actually staying in that room. Well, I was at work the night that it happened, but I was told that she screamed in the middle of the night, and my mother came into the room to see what was going on. The bed was actually levitating, and there was like a demonic looking figure in the corner. And all of a sudden the bed just dropped back down. There's quite a few different other things that happened around the house. Her and I were sitting at the kitchen table one night. My mother had like a hanging fruit basket, and all of a sudden this dark hand comes out of nowhere and smacks it, and it just starts swinging back and forth, and she leapt into my lap. We saw like a little 3-foot figure, like a little dark figure that would shoot around the house really fast. Never really figured out what that was. We had bought a house. We had moved out of state. I had taken a job out of state for a couple of years, and my wife had passed away while I was living there, so I had to move back to Florida. And my son was 3.5 at the time, and he ended up going into that room. I didn't even really think about it when I set up his room there, but he started having a lot of issues. He started talking really weird, like, I don't want to live anymore, beat me, kill me, whatever you want to do. And it really just started getting weird. He was afraid to go to sleep in that room, so he slept in my room with me. I had called in, I was trying to get a hold of TAPS from ghost hunters, and they put me in touch with Kissimmee Paranormal Investigators. And KPI, they came out, they did an investigation in the house, and they said that they would get back to me. And they did. About a week later, they got back to me. They came back out to the house, and they showed me some of the things that they got. They got disembodied voices. They got shadow figures. That was the end of that one, and then it started amping up a little bit more. There was a tree out in the front yard that had been hit by lightning so many times that it finally just split, and I had to have it removed. And when it was removed, there was a well that was discovered underneath, and I never even knew that well was there. So obviously, a lot of people know that wells are portals, and once that tree was pulled out of the way and that well was exposed, it just amped up even more. I mean, it started shooting through the roof. And the woman that I was dating at the time, she said, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do as far as who to call. So I called another ghost hunting team. They came out, and a woman who was on that team was actually with KPI, and she had broke off from KPI, and she told me that some of the stuff that they found in their original investigation actually scared that guy so bad that he didn't even want to acknowledge it. So I only saw half of what they caught. And she told me that they had caught some disembodied voices, especially one that was very, very aggressive. And I said, where? And she said, in the back bedroom. And I'm like, well, that makes sense. So the investigation that they were doing, a friend of mine, one of my childhood friends, had contacted me, and she said, hey, Jason, what you doing? I said, I got a ghost hunter team over here. She says, that's so cool. Can I come over? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. So they were set up on the back porch, and she came over, and we were sitting there just kind of watching the monitors, and she's like, this is so cool. And one of the cameras was set up in the family room facing towards where the figure would walk out of the foyer and down the hallway. And all of a sudden, there's a couple of us out there. All of a sudden, the tripod started rocking back and forth. So we're watching the camera in the screen actually, move back and forth. And then we're watching the tripod rock back and forth, and it fell over. And of course, they tried to debunk it. They looked, there's an AC unit right there, a vent in the ceiling. And I mean, that's obviously not going to push it over. It was stable. Couldn't explain it. She said, hey, do you mind if I go on one of the investigations with them? I said, I don't care if they don't care. And they said, okay, cool. So they went into the back bedroom, and the woman who was on the KPI team had told me that one of the disembodied voices they got was a very aggressive male in that room. And I'm not going to curse on your podcast, but they said, is there anybody here who wants to speak with us? And it came back very aggressively, F you. Okay, well, I mean, that's, cut and dry right there. And I heard it. It was on the EVP. So they're in that room, and I see her in the camera. She kneels down on the other side of the bed, and she's just kind of looking around with the other investigator. And all of a sudden, she like perks up. She gets this weird look on her face, and she comes running out of there. She comes out on the porch, and she said, "Take me home." And I said, "What's wrong?" She says, "Take me home, or I'm walking." Okay. So I told everybody, I said, "Hey, y'all got the house. I got to take her home." They said, "What's wrong?" I said, "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." She wouldn't talk to me all the way back to her house. And when I got back to her house with her, I asked her what happened. She said that she was kneeling there, and all of a sudden she heard a voice in her ear that says, "You're going to effing die." And that was enough for her. And so she wanted to bolt. Understandably so. And she always had a difficult time coming back in that house after that. That group, they found a little bit more, and they also told me some things that I didn't know about what KPI had found. So they did find a spirit up in the attic, and it was just a very benign spirit, just hung out in the attic for whatever reason. There was a spirit of a guy that broke into the house, and my mother had shot and killed at one point in time. And I'll think of his name. Oh, Rodney was his name. And Rodney didn't want to cross over. He was perfectly content hanging out there in the garage. He knew where he was going if he did cross over, and he didn't want to go. So, he just hung out there in the garage. They did encounter the very malevolent spirit in the back bedroom. They came across a lot of other things. They saw some stuff move. They saw some more shadow figures, a few other disembodied voices here and there. They did a blessing on the house, and shortly thereafter, I had a minister friend of mine come out, and he brought some rose oil from Jerusalem, and he went around and he placed crosses inside the house with the rose oil. He did a blessing on the house, and all that kind of pissed it off, and it just started amping up some more. So the woman I was with at the time, I said, I'm at a loss here. I don't know what to do. And she said that one of her teachers, when she was in high school, now lives in Casadega. And just for those who don't know, Casadega is the oldest spiritualist colony in the United States. It's right over here in right next to DeLand, Florida. And so she contacted him, and he got a couple of people from there, a spirit photographer and a spiritual investigator, and they came out to the house. They walked around the house. They spent about 2 hours or so in the house, and they found all kinds of stuff. I think it was right around 38 different individuals that they found inside the house. Faces, voices. Some of it was gibberish. Couldn't really make out what it was. They did encounter the person in the back, and the one actually did the research on the property. And some of the history of the area I knew about. It was several thousand acres at one point. It was a big hunting club, and it had been slowly sold off to developers as the Central Florida area started to grow. That particular area where my house sat, there was an old turpentine plantation there. And the camp for the turpentine plantation was on our property and the properties around it. Turpentine plantations back at that time were basically like slave labor camps. So they would take all the prisoners from the jails, and that weren't like murderers and stuff like that, and they'd put them there. So it was like runaway kids, prostitutes, petty thieves, stuff like that. They'd put them there, and that's where they would do their time in a tent out in the Florida heat, taking care of the turpentine plantation. And come to find out that the spirit that they caught was he was the overseer, and he was a very very brutal man. The well was actually used as a like a solitary confinement. So people were put in that well. It was a dry well. People were put in that well as solitary confinement, and several people died there. So people died on my property. And so then they kind of knew what they were dealing with at that point. Um, they they got together with a few other people. They figured out a plan, and they were going to do a a blessing on the house, but they were also going to do some ceremonies too. Now, the reason that I agreed to all that is because I had contacted the Catholic Church originally. I went to the church up the road, and the priest had said, "Well, you need to get a hold of the diocese and try and get a hold of the bishop's exorcist. And there's a certain way you have to approach it." And so I tried, but because I'm not Catholic and I wasn't part of the diocese, they wouldn't help. Contrary to the movies, they won't come out and help if you're not part of the diocese. I contacted one of the local Baptist churches, and the minister actually laughed at me and said, "Well, I think everybody in your house has a mental problem and you need to go seek help." So, I mean, obviously he was terrified and he just wasn't able to put on the whole armor of God to go fight this because he was scared. I contacted the local synagogue, and the rabbi said, "I'm sorry, sir, we don't have anything set up for that." And he actually gave me the best advice. He said, "I believe you should get a hold of one of the local Native American tribes like the Seminoles, or you should get a hold of somebody up in Casadega." And after he had said that, that's when I had agreed to go on ahead and let them come in and do the rituals. They used Native American rituals. They used some old Celtic rituals. They kind of combined everything, kind of like a fruit salad of different rituals from different pagan religions. And they went around. They blessed the house. They salted the doorways, the windows. They smudged. They did everything that they possibly could. They had a singing bowl. They did everything that they possibly could. And after they left, the spirit activity in that house went from 100 down to say 40. And it had been so bad in the house that I came home one night and there was blood up maybe about 5 feet on the side of the wall. And my dog was cowering in the back. And she had had her eye cut. She was bleeding. So something picked up my dog and threw her up against the wall. And she was just cowering in the corner. And she was bleeding out of her head. And that's how bad it was getting in that house. So after Casadega came through, it made a huge difference. And the air felt lighter. That malevolent spirit in the back, it didn't appear to be there anymore. It just it was like a breath of fresh air in that house because it just started getting so oppressive. Um, I mean, when I was talking to the one woman on the phone, my mother had gotten scratched, and there was 3 scratches, three scratch marks on her arm. And I said, this just happened. And we didn't have phones back then where you could take pictures or anything. So I took a picture of it with a regular camera. But yeah, she's like, "That just happened?" I said, "Yes, it did." They got out there as soon as they possibly could. And I can't thank them enough. All the information was on their website. All the disembodied voices, the pictures, everything were all on there. The unfortunate part is I didn't have a computer at the time, so I couldn't transfer everything over, and thumb drives weren't really a thing. So unfortunately, all of it is lost to the ages now. I don't have any of that information anymore. I was able to share it with quite a few people before the site was taken down. But there was other things that would happen around in the area, like my first wife, when we were still alive, or when she was still alive, we were taking our son out for a walk, and there was a playground at the end of the street. We were walking by with him in his stroller, and there was no breeze. It was warm out. All of a sudden, the swing just started swinging back and forth by itself. And I mean, that's weird, where'd that come from? Just out of nowhere. But that whole area just had the area that I grew up in. The Wakaiba River was really close. That whole area had the Miccosukee, the Seminoles, the Choctaws, and Cherokee. They were all in that area, and rivers were highways back then. So it's understandable that there was spirit activity on the land because there was people there prior to the white man living there. Some of the other things that they found in their investigation, they did not see the spirit of that woman that I mentioned, but they're thinking that was a female Indian that they saw, or that I saw. They did see some faces of females and males appear just out of nowhere. There was a picture of a female's face that appeared on a door. They got pictures of shadow figures standing in the room. Another one walking down the hall. They got a video of one walking down the hallway. Like I said, they found about 38 different individuals in the house. And the only thing that I can think of is because the well was there might have been still a spring underneath the house somewhere. And that's obviously a conduit. The river was just right down the road by like a couple miles. So that right there, we were in the watershed. That's that house that I grew up in. The house that I live in now, I live a little bit further. I live about 25 miles north of where I grew up. And the house that I'm in now, my wife at the time, when we lived here, when she lived here, she was a practicing witch and a shaman. And she had also clinically died twice. She died in a horseback riding accident, and when she was younger, she drowned and was clinically dead for 15 minutes in a cold water creek. So she had come back, and her Indian side of the family kind of disowned her because they said that when she came back that she had brought something with her. And she had always said that it's not necessarily a haunted place, it's a haunted person. There was a minister and his wife that lived in this house before us. There's a little bit of spirit activity in the house when we moved in. Apparently there's a woman in white in the backyard that everybody has seen but me. There is like the spirit of a child that runs through here every once in a while. I do get some disembodied voices. I do get some movement, stuff moving, stuff knocking every once in a while, and I just talk to it. But when she was still here, my wife and I are divorced now, but when she was still here, the spirit activity was amped up pretty high. There was always movement in the house. There was always people coming. There was always entities coming to her because she was a shaman. There was chairs that would just move. You go walking in the kitchen and one of the chairs would move. And it's just things that you had to get used to, because if you let it scare you, then you wouldn't be in the house. I was on the phone the other day with a friend of mine, and in my den, I have a lot of my grandfather's stuff in there, and he does stop by from time to time. He's passed away, but he stops by from time to time. And I heard a male voice in the room, and I assume it's my grandfather, and I say, "Hey, Grandpa, how you doing?" I work overnights, so I have to sleep during the day, and every once in a while, when they're feeling saucy, they'll start moving the bar stools around in the kitchen, so they'll drag them across the tile, and that'll keep me awake, and I have to ask them very nicely, "Hey, can you please stop? I'm trying to sleep." Last week, I was actually laying down, and there was a male voice next to my head. It was kind of gibberish. I couldn't understand what it said. And I just started falling asleep when it happened. And I said, "Okay, I know you're there. Please, I'm trying to sleep." My dog, she sees things all the time. Um, what's kind of cool is that I'm assuming it's my grandfather that will be in the den, and I'll walk by the kitchen and look into the den and see her sitting there. And she's sitting there looking over at one of the corners. Her head's cocked to the side, her ears are popped up, and her tail's wagging. So I'm assuming it's my grandfather talking to her. She's obviously not afraid. My ex-wife's grandkids had both experienced stuff in the house. When they would come over to stay, they had both experienced things. They had both seen things, heard things. Um, the granddaughter, she was like 4 at the time, so it kind of frightened her a little bit. But we told her there's nothing here that's going to bother you, and there hasn't been anything malevolent in this house. Everything is just kind of just hey, we're here, just letting us know. And I'm okay with that. I mean, at the end of the day, they're people too. They're just on the other side of the veil. Um, yeah, I had a list. I've pretty much gone through the list. Just all the points that I wanted to hit because I didn't want to leave anything out, and I want to try to get everything.
Okay, Jason. Well, I appreciate you for sharing that with me, and that certainly is terrifying. And I'm sorry you went through that. I understand what it's like to live in a haunted house, and it definitely keeps you on edge. Why do you think this activity was taking place? Do you think like the house was just simply haunted, or built on top of like burial mounds, or there was something else deeper going on?
I don't necessarily think it was built on burial mounds. I think that the ground itself was just haunted, simply due to the fact that it was built on top of an old turpentine plantation, and inside that well, people had died. So people had died on my property, and being that there was a well there, there has to be a spring underneath the property somewhere. Whether it's dried up or not, I don't know. But um, that's the only thing that I can think of is that water is a conduit for spirit activity, and that's probably why it amped up. The house is currently, after my mother sold the house, she sold it to some investors, and they rent it. People don't stay in that house more than a year. I mean, I check on it every once in a while just to see if it's sold or what, and it mentions that it's being rented, and people don't stay in it more than a year. They usually bolt from there. And granted, Florida is a very transient state, but it's a very nice area, and the houses around it, the people have been there for years. But that house in particular just happens to, people don't stay in it very long. But
Yeah.
that's the house that I grew up in. There's a gun range that I go to in over here in Central Florida, and that range in the back, there's Indian burial mounds back behind the berm. And the one owner, the owner's wife, and some of the guys who worked there at the time, they had wanted some questions answered. So they contacted me and asked me if my ex, we were married at the time, if my ex-wife and I, if we could come out there and check things out, her being a shaman and a witch. The two guys who worked out there at the property and helped with the gun range, they were Norse pagans. So there was a big oak tree back in the swamp where they would have some rituals. They did some blood sacrifices, like killing a wild hog, that kind of stuff. We did walk the property back there. You can clearly see the burial mounds. They're about, maybe, of course, they've been eroded over time, so they're only about 5 feet above the ground. And that area tends to flood now, so everything probably gets eroded down. They probably were bigger at one time, but there is a panther in the area, and when panthers scream, it sounds like a woman screaming. But they have heard a really weird scream in the middle of the night coming from that area. And my wife had said, well, it sounds like it's probably a skinwalker that protects the area. And you're fine during the day, but at night, if you go back there and disturb the mounds, it will probably kill you. There was probably about 6 of us that day. Me and my wife, the owner, and 3 of the guys who worked there. The other 2 were there. I think there was another one also. But We were all carrying firearms because, there's wild hogs out there and stuff too. We had started to walk around back there just to check things out, have my wife kind of get a feeling for it. We were headed back towards the one fence line, and we caught movement, and it was the weirdest thing. We couldn't identify what it was. We all of us carrying rifles, we went guns up on it, and it was about 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall, and kind of like in the movie Predator, where Bill Duke's character, he sees the predator, it's cloaked, it turns around and its eyes flash and it runs off into the jungle. That's about what we saw. It was about 4 feet tall. It was standing there by the fence line, and it looked at us, and it had kind of like yellow eyes. And we were standing there just kind of figuring out what to do. We're guns up on this thing, and we're like, what do we do? Do we shoot? Do we not? And then it just vanished. So we looked it up a little bit later, and we determined what it was a Glimmer man. And there'd been reports in forest from like here to Georgia, people out in the woods, and they, like, a hunter was saying that he saw something about 4 feet tall with yellow eyes that, ran by the area that he was sitting in a tree stand. So the only thing that we can figure out is that, it was probably like a Glimmer man. And that was the first time I had ever heard of such a thing. You hear about all the other stuff out there, the Slender Man and all that kind of stuff. But there was an incident that happened back behind the 500-yard range, and it happened a couple days prior, and we went to go back there and take a look and see if it was still there. There was a wild hog that it looks like it had been picked up. Something had reached inside of it, grabbed everything inside and pulled it back out, and just left the bag of flesh and dropped it. We went back over in that area, and that bag of flesh was still there. There was no bones in it. There was no muscle organs. There was no blood, nothing. It's like something just reached into it and just pulled it right up against, kind of like a wall or something, just pulled everything right out and just dropped it. And I mean, that's creepy as hell. You don't expect to see that. The next day, I get a call that, hey, can I come back out there and take a look? So we all went back out there and take a look. There was a hog that had been killed, and there was like a little canal that ran along one side of the property. There was a hog that had been killed, and it looks like its head had been surgically removed. The flesh, the muscle, the bone, everything was just completely severed, and it was cauterized. There was no blood. Couldn't find the head anywhere. There was a small alligator that patrolled that area. There's bears. There's other wild hogs, bobcats, stuff like that. There was no predation on that body. There wasn't even bugs on that body. There was no flies flying around it, nothing. There was absolutely nothing around that body. And, what do? You just stand there and just try to figure that one out. It was laying like something had killed it, cut its head off, and picked it up and thrown it about 15 feet or so, because we could see where it had been killed because the area had been disturbed. And then you could see something had picked it up, thrown that hog up into the air, probably about 6-7 feet, broken a few branches, and then it landed, hit the ground, and slid right up against the edge of that little canal. Like I said, there was no blood. There wasn't even a smell to it. And granted, it happened the night before, but even in the Florida sun, in the afternoon, you're going to start smelling something. But there wasn't bugs. There wasn't anything on it. So we looked around a little bit more. We tried to find the head. We tried to find anything that would indicate what happened to it. We didn't see anything. So we left it be. And I got a call, excuse me, I got a call the next day saying it was gone. Nothing had drug it off. It hadn't been disturbed anywhere around it. Like something had, like the gator grabbed it and thrashed it around and drug it in. It was gone. It disappeared. So there's something going on out there. I don't get out there much anymore. Those two guys, they don't work there anymore. That's the last I've heard of anything. The last time I was out there for a training exercise, there was we were over in that area, and there was a couple guys who I wanted to just walk over to the tree and see that area and walk back there a little bit. There's a couple guys that said that they didn't feel good about that area and that they didn't want to walk into it. And these guys are combat veterans, and they didn't feel right about walking in those woods. And so I kind of explained to them what was going on back in that area, and they said, "Yeah, that's probably why we didn't feel right about going in there." And again, these guys are combat veterans and didn't want to go back there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's terrifying. And it makes me wonder if there really is a connection with the wells, like you were speaking about earlier, because wells are often mentioned in the Bible, and it's just something that's come up over and over again from the Old Testament to the New Testament. And I feel like there is some sort of significance there. And it almost reminds me of like caves or springs, like they talk about those being portal areas. So it would make sense that a well could possibly be a portal to other worlds.
Absolutely. And even though it was a dry well, they had to have tapped into a spring somewhere along the line. I mean, granted, we were in the Khyber River Basin, and a couple of years after we moved there, my parents had a pool put in, and they hit water like 7 feet down. So they ended up having to pump out the area in order to dig down further to put the pool in. So I'm assuming there's probably a spring underneath the area somewhere, and that well had either been filled in or it just went dry in that particular area. But it was brick. It was bricked in, and there was a reason it was there.
Yeah, absolutely. The story about the bed levitating, I know you weren't there, but I know you believe everything they told you. That's frightening. And to me, that definitely indicates demonic activity. And I agree with you. Like, the churches did not want to investigate it. It's too easy to write you off and tell you to go get mental help because they don't want to deal with it. I think deep down inside they knew, oh man, what if he's telling the truth? I don't want to go there. Like, they kind of freaked out and try to backtrack and avoid it.
Yeah. The one woman who was with KPI and then switched over to the other group, she came in when she was with KPI. She came in and sat on that bed, and she said, "This bed's been levitated before, hasn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "Yeah, I can feel that. I got goosebumps right now." Yeah, she could actually feel that the bed had been levitated at one point in time. But it struck me as odd, contacting the Baptist church, and I'm not going to sit there and badmouth a religion or anything, but they talk about putting on the whole armor of God and, don't be afraid in the face of evil, that kind of stuff. And then when they were actually faced with it, he literally laughed at me and told me that we needed to go get psychological help.
Yeah, that's what they told me. And the activity that I was experiencing in that house was definitely affecting my mental health. Like, I don't see how it wouldn't affect anyone's mental health if you're experiencing that type of activity. I mean, it's not normal. It's not good.
But yeah, it can definitely mess with you, and it can take you into depression or any kind of thing. I mean, if it keeps you awake all night, you don't sleep. But I just don't understand why they were afraid to come out. It's like they don't really believe what they say.
Yeah.
But the Catholic Church, they just, if you're not a member of the diocese, they will not help you. And I had several priests tell me that we're sorry, you're not Catholic, we can't help you. And I said, okay, I get it. And then the rabbi, he was the most honest one. He said, we don't have anything set up for that. And he's the one who actually gave the best advice. He didn't laugh at me or anything. He didn't tell me no. He didn't tell me to piss off, nothing. He just, he was just very matter of fact. And he said, I want to help you, but we don't have anything set up for that. And then that's when we started talking a little bit more. And he said, maybe you should contact the Native American tribes like the Seminoles, get a hold of Casadega. They probably have somebody in place for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't blame the churches or the faith. You can just blame the individuals. I mean, I often hear people say, "Oh, Catholics are bad because of the Pope," but you can't say that every Catholic is bad just because there's the Pope and the Vatican. That's like saying the United States is bad because they're hiding secrets at Area 51. Well, not every American is bad. They don't have anything to do with that, and
Exactly.
it's just how it is.
Yeah, it's just representation and just poor representation. Actually,
Hmm.
I don't hold it against the Catholic Church. It's just that's their setup.
Yeah.
If you're not a member of the diocese, they don't help you. You got to be Catholic. You
I
got to
think
be in the group. You got
Yeah,
to be
and
in
I,
the
I
club.
think if you would have went somewhere else to like a different group of Catholics, you may have gotten a different answer. I know there's people that like already started living together, they're a couple, and maybe they had a kid before marriage. Like some churches wouldn't marry them, and they just go somewhere else, and another church would. So it's hard to say. I think it comes down to the individual and what they want to do.
Well, yeah. My cousin up in St. Louis, when she was marrying her husband, he was Catholic, she wasn't, and the diocese said, "Well, we can't marry you unless you become a Catholic." And she said, "Well, I'm not going to." And she came home, told my uncle, and he made a phone call. And like the next day, okay, yep, we can marry you, no problem. The the bishop in the area was his college roommate, so all he had to do was just make a phone call to the bishop, and that took care of that problem right there. Oh, now we can marry you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like in the New Testament, it says that Jesus came for all believers and even non-believers. So, I mean, I feel like the Catholic Church should be the same way. Like whether you're in a foreign country and you're not a Jew, like you can still be a Christian. And I don't know. I feel like the Catholic Church should have that same approach.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone has their every different religion has their quirks in the way that they do things and their parameters, and that's fine. That's their parameters. That's their prerogative.
Yeah, absolutely. So, which paranormal experience was the most terrifying, the most significant? Like, out of all the stories you told me, which one really affected you the most?
Hmm, that's a good one. Um, Probably the one that affected me the most was the fact that that very malevolent spirit was preying on my son, and he was afraid to sleep in his room. Um, he would say things. I mean, he was like 4 years old, and he's sitting there saying. And we moved back when he was 3.5. So at 4 years old, he's saying, "I don't want to live anymore. Beat me, kill me. I don't care what happens to me." At that point, it's like, what do you do? I mean, that's my 4-year-old son. So that one, that one actually scared me the most. I don't scare very easy, but that actually scared me the most because there's nothing I could do other than try to protect him by, hey, sleep with me in my room, or the other option was to move out, but I'm still trying to sell my house up in the other state. And so, yeah, that one, if it's something physical that I can deal with, that's one thing. But if it's a spirit, you know, you can't shoot it, you can't stab it, you can't beat it with a bat. There's nothing you can do. You just have to. It becomes spiritual at that end, and I didn't know what to do. I was kind of at a loss, and I had nowhere I could go. So just had to kind of endure it the best I could and protect my son as best I could.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like someone breaking into your house. You can get some firearms ready, lock up the house, get some cameras. But when you're dealing with the paranormal, it's like, when is it going to show up? Is it going to happen when I'm asleep or I'm not home? What's it going to do to my kids? And that's scary. I mean, the psychological warfare behind experiencing paranormal activity is just, it's awful.
Well, yeah, exactly. And then the other one is when I came home and I found blood on the side of the wall in the hallway and found my dog with her, above her eye was cut open, and something had picked her up and thrown her up against the wall. And she's an innocent dog. She doesn't know any better. She doesn't know what's going on. And if it shows up, there's nothing I can do. It obviously attacked her when I was at work.
Oh, yeah. So you're still experiencing the activity today, but it's not as intense as it used to be. Do you feel like it followed you to your new location?
No, where I live now, I think some of it was already here, and my ex-wife, um, she was haunted, and when she left, I told her, "Hey, take all your friends with you." And when she left, all that spirit activity dropped off. So it was actually her that she was like she was like a lighthouse in an ocean of darkness, and they honed in on that, and they're like, "Oh, somebody that can see us." And so they would come to her and show up, and they were just constantly coming in, and she was open to that. So they would just come into the house, and she would sage, she would smudge, she would salt, she would do all that. And there was another house that I was living in after I moved out of the house that I grew up in. I had bought another house, and it was probably about 10 miles down the road from there. Um, we had just started dating, and she was at the house one night, and I was showing her pictures of my first wife, my son's mom, and we're sitting there, and my gun safe was to the left, and so I'm showing her some pictures, and all of a sudden there was a knock on the inside of the safe, and inside that safe I had some of her jewelry, her wedding ring, that kind of stuff, and she had actually um, said, "Do you want me to try and communicate with her?" And I was like, "Okay," and I didn't really know what was going to happen. And all of a sudden, so we're standing there, and she started to speak, and she started to try and communicate with her. And all of a sudden, she turns around, she looks at me, and her eyes had changed, and her voice had changed. And I got goosebumps now. That actually scared the hell out of me at that point, because she was channeling my wife, and a few of the things that she said, she wouldn't have known. My wife would have known, but she wouldn't have known. And then she started to walk towards me, and like I said, her eyes had changed, and I mean, again, I got scared. I backed off, and it freaked me out pretty bad. And I said, "Stop right now." And as soon as I said that, she turned around and it was gone.
Yeah, that's spooky as heck. Well, at least you're doing better now, and the stuff has fizzled out. I think they are attracted to certain individuals, so I don't know. I feel like you're in a good place now. So just try to
Yeah,
keep yourself protected, man.
yeah, she's going more into uh, her shamanism, her spiritualism. She's trying to help people. So she's a very caring, loving woman. She's doing all the different work to try and make herself more available to that type of thing, so that she can help people spiritually. Um, like I said, she is a witch. She's a green witch, which means that she's a healer, and that's where the shamanism comes in. So she's learned how to do um, herbal work, tinctures, that kind of stuff, and she just wants to use that to help people. And she tries not to channel anymore, um, but she does have this gift of, she'll be at work, and she works around the public, and all of a sudden somebody will appear next to her and say, "Hey, go tell this person something." And she'll walk over and she'll say, "Hey, so and so wanted me to tell you this." And they'll just start crying immediately. And she knows that who it is. It's a dead friend, a dead relative, something like that. And she's had to kind of curtail that a little bit. When it first started to happen, she didn't understand what it was. Um, we were at a little downtown historical area, and we had gone into this one shop, a little coffee shop, and we came back out, and she had this overwhelming urge to go say something to this one woman, hey, so and so wanted me to tell you this, and I don't know why, but they wanted me to tell you. And the woman who she had told had said that was a friend of hers who he had tried to kill himself. And she's from California, and he had tried to kill himself a couple days prior, and she didn't put two and two together at that point. So she talked with her for a few minutes, and then we left. Didn't dawn on her until afterwards, and I started thinking about it. I said, that was his spirit. He completed it. So if he tried a couple days ago, he actually finished the act, and then that was him coming to you, wanting him to tell her. And then she's done that many, many, many times. I've watched her do it, and it's just the weirdest thing that she will have people come to her and say, "Hey, go tell that guy sitting there, that his wife will show up and say, hey, go tell that guy over there that I love him and I care about him very much and I miss him." And she'll go over there and say something, and she will have died just a couple days prior. It's the weirdest thing. I've watched it happen many, many times. She has that gift of being able to do that. She doesn't seek it out. It happens. My ex was a very amazing woman, and I mean, her and I just didn't work out, but never badmouth her. She's an absolutely amazing woman, and she does everything she possibly can to help people, and she has a gift of being able to channel the spirit world, and it's just amazing to watch it happen when it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people have a gift and you just have to use it for good. I always tell people, instead of like channeling spirits, like whether it's negative spirits, try using your gift to like locate missing people or help someone find their dog or some mystery that benefits the people. Because I don't know, I feel like when you channel spirits, it's almost like dialing like a hotline to hell, because you never know what's going to answer on the other side. So it's kind of scary.
Like a Ouija board.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know, people have gifts, and that's what prophets are in the Bible. They're just like modern day psychics or mediums. They're just channeling anyone and everything, which is dangerous. So I feel like you just want to make sure that you keep yourself protected and you're always communicating with God.
Yeah, I've met a couple hacks in my life. Just being around the spiritual community like I have. I mean, I never intentionally sought it out, but you marry a woman who's a witch and a shaman, you end up in that lifestyle, and yes, there are some hacks up there in Casadega. They claim to be something that they're not. I've watched, like the one in particular said that her energy was so powerful that she could take dowsing rods and they could spin on their own. And I believe in dowsing rods. I've done it myself. But she's holding this dowsing rod in her hand, and she's acting like it's spinning on its own. But I very subtly see her hand moving. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And I don't want to say you're a hack. And I figured that out a while back. But
yeah, I've ran across people like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I had her do several different types of spiritual cleansings on me before, and like right before my ex-wife and I, right before we got married, she wanted to do one just to strip away any type of negativity. And there was another one. I was going through kind of a dark time in my life, and I'd lost a couple friends right in a row. So we went down to this one area on her property where she has kind of like a labyrinth set up and some spiritual totems, and she did a cleansing there. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is the same one you did before, So I'm sitting there just kind of watching it, and it's the same procedure. She's a hack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, Jason, you did an excellent job at describing these experiences. I felt like I was right there with you, and you went from experiencing paranormal activity to later finding Bigfoot tracks in the woods, and it's certainly been an adventure in your life. So hopefully you find something good in the future. I feel like you will deep in Florida. And if you keep going to that spot where you discover the tracks, I feel like something else will happen little by little.
Well, yes, small game season's coming up, and I hunt that area, so maybe or maybe not, I'll see something again. I always look ahead of me because I don't want to step on water moccasins and rattlesnakes, and we got a lot of them here. But yeah, I always keep my eye out and always take a look because you never know what you're going to see. Just keep quiet and walk through the woods and just observe, and you see all kinds of things. If you're talking, you don't see anything because everything runs off.
Okay, Jason, are there any other experiences that you can think of? Anything else that you'd like to share?
No, sir, that's pretty much everything that I can think of because I've been driving around the past couple nights thinking and trying to collect all my thoughts, and I pretty much touched on everything I could think of. Other than ghost encounters and stuff, but that's, as far as Bigfoot encounters, that's pretty much everything for me.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you for taking the time to share these experiences with me. Certainly some awesome tracks, and I believe they're in there, and I'm pretty sure that you feel like they are too. So definitely keep an eye out, keep your head on a swivel, and in the future, if you run into these things, contact me. I'd like to hear more about it.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, and I hope you have an excellent weekend. Be safe out there in the woods, okay?
Always.
That wraps up our conversation with Jason from Florida. From massive skunk ape tracks to mysterious whistles in the woods, his story reminds us that the unexplained is always closer than we think. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share Sasquatch Theory so more people can hear these incredible encounters. If you guys can, please donate to the channel and be sure to share your own experiences on Sasquatch Theory. Don't forget to leave a comment about your own experiences with the unknown. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay curious, stay safe, and keep searching for the truth.